Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN AM for Thursday, June 18th, 2020. Today's top story is the pandemic may spark a shift in cybersecurity and tips you can use when working from home. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Kevin Urso. He is the president of Connected Technologies, LLC. Kevin, welcome back to the program. Thanks for joining us this morning.
No, thanks for having me.
Well, before we jump in, let's talk about just your business. You're a small business owner. You're out on Long Island. How have you dealt with the pandemic and working with your clients, who we're going to get to in a couple minutes, about cybersecurity?
Right. So us personally, honestly, we're very lucky. We do most of our work remotely anyway. So switching to a remote workforce was very, very easy for us. Mm-hmm. We've actually delayed going back. We could have went back a couple of weeks ago, but we said, we're doing fine. Let's just stay safe for a little while. Now for our clients, it was a mixed bag. Some clients who have been doing the normal cybersecurity suggestions that we've been saying over the years, we didn't plan for this exactly, but our disaster recovery was close enough that we made some quick adjustments and they got up and running very quickly, in a day or two. Some of the other ones who haven't done that homework, it was a rough road for them. They're scrambling to get laptops, they're scrambling to get cameras, they're scrambling to get everything, and everyone in the world was trying to do that.
Yeah.
And it was tough.
Yeah. Well, I think there's some lessons there, Kevin, and let's just jump right in, because, just because we had a pandemic and people working from home doesn't mean that the hackers and other unethical people trying to steal money, trying to steal stimulus payments aren't actively trying to engage and trying to infiltrate. Give us your assessment of the pandemic, the shift to Zoom and other Skype technologies. I know we were talking offline about Microsoft Office 365 having some breaches. What's your perspective on this pandemic and the impact on cybersecurity?
Yeah, so a typical company normally has, if they're doing anything for cybersecurity, they have layers of security. Mm-hmm. So they may have a firewall, they may have internal processes. And what happened is, overnight, half of those layers, or more than half, just went away. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, you got people working from home. And like I said, maybe the company didn't give their employees corporate laptops, but they needed these people to get online quickly. So yeah, let's use your home machine. Let's use your home Mac, the same one they're using for school. Kids are using for school. And that opened up a huge door for the unethical people to try to, breach your network. So all of a sudden, you got all these machines connecting to your network that are maybe not secure. Yeah. And a hacker can use those as entry points in.
Yeah, I was reading something last week when we covered it on the network about Microsoft Office Excel macros. And you and I, back in the old college days, we used a lot of macros. People still today use a lot of macros. They had actually been hacked to the point where Microsoft issued a notice. This is just another sign of the times where you have got to be vigilant. And even the biggest companies are at risk.
Yeah, definitely. So, it could be something like a macro, or it could be something very, very simple. We had an organization contact us last week. All of a sudden, they were getting emails from one of their existing clients, someone they trust, saying, "Hey, if you pay this bill, today, we'll give you a 5% discount." Mm-hmm. What happened was the hacker had breached their Office 365 system just by simply getting their password, and the organization transferred $45,000 in an ACH payment out to the hacker.
Wow.
And then continued on to reach out to all their clients, do the same thing. So it can be a simple, putting your password in the wrong place type attack as well.
Yeah, And I was reading as well that NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, right? They just had a successful launch with SpaceX. They also suffered a breach. So it's not just small organizations, it's large organizations. Kevin, would you expect, I just want to put, maybe look at your crystal ball. Would you expect the amount of, with more people working remotely now, and it looks like this will continue, especially for jobs, you mentioned your staff able to work remotely, you delayed reopening. It looks like a lot of businesses, especially here in the Northeast, will delay it, and it could be around the country as well. So more people work from home. Would you expect more businesses, more organizations to invest more heavily into their infrastructure, into their cybersecurity, knowing what we know now, doing the plans that you were talking about, the recovery, disaster recovery, issuing corporate laptops? Sounds like that's going to be a big expense that is CIO executives are going to have to do in the years to come.
Yeah, definitely. I think companies that experience now see how important that planning is and having that disaster recovery. We're seeing, I would say, 30 to 40% increase in attacks over this time period using coronavirus or using the different programs for helping companies. So yeah, I think organizations need to make this one of their main planning points that they do throughout the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the personal level, there are so many Americans out there who got the stimulus payment, the $1,200 per person. I think it was and you could get more if you were a married couple and had a family. But even those were at risk. So I was reading that individuals who were using banking apps were at risk. There were points where Microsoft and Google, for their respective operating systems, had to actually pull apps down because they were acting in a nefarious manner and stealing information. So it's not just the big corporations or the smaller organizations, it's also personal as well.
Yeah, definitely. They're very, very good at making those emails realistic, and they're very, very effective. They play on your emotions. That's what they're designed to do. And that company I was telling you about, they really didn't do anything wrong other than they use the same password over and over and over. So it was they got tricked basically.
Yeah. I mean, what I always advise people, and I want to get your perspective because I know this is sophisticated, but the first thing I do when I look at an email and someone is requesting something from me, or they tell me I've won $1 million and need my bank information, which it never is like that, right? But I always look at the email address. I go up into the email and I look at the email address. Is that still a valid tactic, or can that be replicated and the subnet mask and everything be copied and to make it look like it's real?
Yeah, so it can be if that remote company was compromised, that email address could come from a valid person, but the link or the attachment in the email could be malicious. So you have to be careful about just trusting the email that has come from. What you should do is look at the link, and then let's say it's google.com. It's not the same thing as google.abc.com, So you got to make sure it's the real domain name that you're going to. I would say the best answer to that is if you're getting something from your bank, call them up.
Yeah.
Don't respond to that email. Log into your web portal for your bank and do it that way, or call them up and do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of old-fashioned, right? But I mean, it makes sense. I mean, really, and I've been getting emails from people get emails from the Internal Revenue Service. They get, or what looks to be the Internal Revenue Service. And my understanding for a lot of these big, especially governmental entities, they're not going to reach out and say you're going to be audited if you don't do X, Y, and Z. I think it's a matter of educating people. And I know you and I have talked about this at length on the network, on the podcast. A lot of this educating and reinforcing the education with different tutorials and web-based and in-person meetings.
Yeah, I would say a year or so ago, you would do, we would recommend, a once a year training. So you would put your staff through a training. Everyone would go to a class, or they would do it online. They would take a test. What we noticed was, people did pretty well for the weeks following that test, but then it quickly kind of dove off. So now what we do is the training is, you still take the test, you still take the once a year, but now we reinforce that with weekly little micro trainings or micro videos, just to kind of keep that always at the top of their mind when they're using their computer. This is what could happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot more effective.
Yeah, I think little bursts make a lot of sense. Not just for cybersecurity, but for a lot of different things. Keep things front of mind, because people who are doing their work, they're trying to do the work. They can't always, be aware of everything that's going on. But trying to just remind people over time, incrementally, seems to make the most sense. Kevin, I want to hold you over, but when we come back, we're going to talk more about cybersecurity with Kevin Urso. So stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
The windows on our homes, they protect us and the ones we love, but they do much more. At Renewal by Andersen, making your home more comfortable is at the center of every window we make. It's why we custom build our windows in America and install them in as little as one day. It's why we build our frames with exclusive Fibrex composite material that's 2 times stronger than vinyl. It's why our glass helps keep your home warmer in winter, cooler in summer, and quieter all year long. It's why we stand behind every window with a 20-year limited warranty. Why not help lower your energy costs while giving your home and family the best? Call 1-800-835-6525 to schedule a free in-home consultation. Buy one, get one at 40% off with this special offer. Plus, get special financing with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest for 1 full year. Renewal by Andersen, the better way to a better window. Call 1-800-835-6525 now.
Welcome back. We're talking to Kevin Urso. He is the president of Connected Technologies. Kevin, thanks so much for sticking around this morning.
Thank you. It's fun.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So I know before we went to break, we talked a lot about how people can actually protect themselves and their organizations, but you actually have a list that you and the team at Connected Technologies put together. Would you mind running through some of those things just so we can kind of tick them off and get people kind of engaged? And just like your micro videos, people can watch this video, especially Kevin's segment, the second segment, over and over again to kind of familiarize themselves with what he's talking about. Go ahead, Kev.
Sure. So these are basic things that you should be doing if you're working from home. And we find that we're not very good at doing these things. These are things that tend to kind of just be forgotten about. So if you're working from home, you need to change your default Wi-Fi password. Okay, so you shouldn't be using the Wi-Fi that came with the box when you installed it. Same thing with your router, the firewall that protects you from the internet. that password needs to be changed if you're working from home. You need to update your software regularly. So do all your Microsoft patches, your Adobe, your Office, all those things need to be updated. You need to make sure you're using a virtual private network to connect into your corporate environment. So that basically allows you to use the internet privately and connect into your office. You really should be separating, if possible, your personal and your corporate use. So if you had a laptop that you want to use for work, and then your laptop you use for Facebook and all that stuff, you want to really have them separate if at all possible. You want to be using multi-factor authentication. So that's basically when you log in, it asks you for a second way to verify you.
Okay.
A company should really have a corporate policy on how to share files. So how do you save your files? Where are you saving them? You know, you don't want people putting them on their OneDrive or their accounts. You want them saved in the corporate shared cloud system. You want to monitor what software you're installing. And the big one is you don't want to be using administrator rights on your computer. Okay? Because if you use administrator rights, if you do happen to click on an email or open something, there's a much, much bigger chance that that malicious link or attachment is going to do some major damage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this sound like great tips, really important tips. Kevin, I want to I'll switch gears just a little bit because you and I have talked about this offline a lot in a lot of ways. You know, many organizations, large and small, whether they're not-for-profit or for-profit, go through an audit, whether it's by your firm or another firm, auditing their cybersecurity processes, and then they have an audit report. But there doesn't appear, at least to my knowledge, to be a standard across the board where you have company A that you can easily put company A and company B and company C together. Do you think that there is a need for a standard, even though there is individual differences between networks? And you know, what stands in the way potentially of a standard?
So I think coming up with a standard is going to be difficult. Now there is a best practices, a framework, let's say.
Okay.
So the NIST 800-181, that's a framework by the government that says these are best practices that you should be doing. So a lot of the things I just mentioned are listed in there. Mm-hmm. Now the reason why they can't be an exact standard is every network is set up very differently. Right. So it'd be very difficult to say you have to do X, Y, Z. It wouldn't necessarily fit for every single company.
But if you have, like, say you are trying to hire a bank to do cash services. Say you're an organization, you're going to use a bank and you're going to use send data back and forth. How do you compare, for example, Bank of America to Chase, Citibank, to your local bank? Because they're all going to give you different fees. To your point, they're going to have different systems. They're going to have different networks. They're going to have different topologies. All those things, how they work, how they shield their clients, how they shield their employees. How do you assess that? I mean, that's got to be terribly challenging in a bidding or selection situation. Yeah,
right now I would say there's not a great solution for that. You know, if there was an organization that would say, hey, we've tested this company and according to our standards they meet all the basics, that would be great. But there's really not something out there that everyone agrees upon right now.
Yeah, and agreement's going to be important. I mean, you got to have a standard, you got to have everyone agree to use the standard. And I think there's probably a risk there, right? That if you give too much information, that it can be used in a competitive manner between organizations, but also could be used unethically by hackers should that information get out there. Like if you do a public bid, those public bids would be subject to a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, public records request, and bad people could get access to that and ruin not only the competitive edge, but also ruin your protections. You'd have to keep changing things up.
Right. there's also some legal ramifications as well. So, if you, if you have an assessment like that and you're not doing certain things, and something does happen and you get sued, then that becomes part of the litigation process.
Yeah, and I think just given what's California with their passage of recent law, you had GDPR, which is a little different in the European Union. I know New York State, where you reside, they have some data privacy rules. So I think there's a lot of complexity here. But I guess what's clear is that you, as a cybersecurity expert, and people inside the industry and outside the industry, you're going to be working for the years to come to continue to strengthen infrastructure, strengthen systems, look for ways to. I mean, it's kind of always evolving, right? I mean, there's never a perfect solution to this. And I think people have to get out of that mindset, like, okay, we got it, we're done, right? That's not the mindset you have to have.
It's an ongoing process, because honestly, your IT is constantly changing and evolving. So it has to be something that you're constantly auditing and you're constantly reviewing and updating.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like if you want to learn a lot and be in a position where you're always learning and evolving, it sounds like cybersecurity and technology seems like the place to be. Kevin Urso, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks so much for sharing some of your insight, and we look forward to having you back on the program very soon.
Great, thanks so much. Stay healthy.
That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, and more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Attention! The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has officially authorized new benefits that Medicare Advantage plans may include. To get the benefits you deserve, you can call the Medicare Coverage Helpline.
Hi, I'm Joe Namath. If you're on Medicare, this is important information. I called the Medicare Coverage Helpline and they instantly looked up my coverage. In this one simple call, they offered to enroll me in a plan that includes rides to medical appointments, private home aides, doctors and nurses' visits by telephone, and even home-delivered meals. The plan also includes dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drug coverage, all at no additional cost.
Don't delay. Call to see if the new benefits are available in your area.
Call the number on your screen now. It's free.
Call 1-800-757-1451. That's 1-800-757-1451.